When the heart remembers part I. The collision, the rain had not stopped for hours. It rolled over the rooftops of Newark like an endless gray curtain, dripping into alleys, flooding sidewalks, carrying with it the dull ache of a city that never seemed to sleep, yet never truly woke. For Anna Collins, the rain was a kind of soundtrack to her life, a steady, monotonous rhythm. Much like her days, she pulled her coat tighter around her frame, her umbrella tilted against the wind as she hurried down Mulberry Street. The office lights had long since gone dark behind her, leaving her with the echo of endless spreadsheets and the faint sting of fluorescent bulbs still imprinted on her eyes. 32 years old, living alone in a small apartment with peeling paint and a stubborn radiator, Anna had learned to endure rather than to hope. Hope, she had discovered, was dangerous. It promised light and warmth but left ashes when it burned out. And yet, on this particular night, the city had other plans. The corner of Market and Mulberry, she collided with him. The impact was sharp enough to make her stumble. Papers exploded into the air, caught briefly in the drizzle before collapsing into puddles. She gasped, kneeling instinctively to help gather them. "I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, her hair damp against her cheek. The man crouched beside her, his hand brushing against hers as both reached for the same page. He looked up, and for one suspended moment, their eyes met. He was perhaps mid-30s, his face sharp but softened by exhaustion. Dark hair, damp from the rain, clung to his forehead. There was something restless in his gaze, something that spoke of sleepless nights and a soul that refused to settle. "Don't apologize," he said, his voice low, almost amused. "I should have watched where I was going. I get lost in my head sometimes." Anna glanced at the scattered sheets. They were sketches, faces, hands, fragments of buildings. The kind of quick but vivid strokes that only came from someone who lived in constant conversation with his art. And then her breath caught. There, among the rain-stained sketches, was her face. Not an exact likeness, more a memory, a vision, but unmistakably her. The slope of her jaw, the curve of her lips, the distant gaze in her eyes as though she were looking at something beyond reach. This looks like me," she whispered. The man froze. His throat worked as he tried to form words. Then, with an uneasy half-smile, he admitted, "I've been drawing her for months. I didn't know she was real until now." The city blurred around them. Horns, footsteps, the hiss of rain, but it all seemed to fade. Anna's pulse quickened, her hand trembling as she returned the sketch. A part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, to dismiss it as coincidence. But another part, deep, quiet, insistent, felt something shift, fate. That dangerous word. They gathered the rest of his drawings in silence, their fingers brushing more often than chance would allow. When they finally stood, he extended his hand. "Mark," he said. "Anna," she replied that it should have ended there. A fleeting encounter in the rain, a name exchanged and forgotten. But the rain didn't let up, and the street offered them little choice. "There's a cafe just around the corner," Mark said, hesitating. "If you need to wait out the storm, it's warmer than this." She should have refused. She didn't. The cafe was dimly lit, its windows fogged by the damp heat inside. A pianist in the corner played something soft, something old, notes tumbling like raindrops themselves. The smell of coffee and baked bread wrapped around them as they found a small table near the window. Anna watched as Mark shook water from his sketchbook and carefully spread a napkin over it. His hands were stained faintly with charcoal, his nails uneven, his wrists marked by the pressure of constant work. "You're an artist," she said, though it was obvious. "Trying to be," he replied with a half-laugh. "Mostly I'm just broke." The honesty in his tone disarmed her. "And you?" he asked. She hesitated. "An accountant. Numbers. Spreadsheets. Nothing worth sketching." He tilted his head, studying her as though her words carried no weight. "You'd be surprised what's worth sketching." Their coffees arrived, steaming in chipped mugs. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the rain drum against the glass. Anna should have felt uncomfortable, sitting across from a stranger. Instead, there was something oddly familiar in his presence, as though her solitude had always been leading her here. "Why her?" she finally asked, tapping the edge of the page where her face appeared. Mark leaned back, his eyes narrowing in thought. "I don't know. I see her everywhere." On trains, in the reflection of glass, in dreams. I draw because I don't know what else to do with it. His gaze flicked to hers, and for an instant, the world tilted. Anna swallowed. She wanted to ask what it meant, wanted to demand why she of all people would haunt the sketchbook of a man she'd never met. But instead, she sipped her coffee, her hands trembling slightly. Outside, the rain intensified, streaking the glass in restless rivers. They talked for hours, about trivial things at first, then about deeper ones. She told him about the father she hadn't spoken to in years, the way loneliness felt like wallpaper peeling slowly from her life. He spoke of cities he had lived in, canvases sold for too little, nights where he couldn't bear to sleep for fear of dreams. By the time the storm eased, Anna realized she had stopped watching the clock. Mark walked her home, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. They paused outside her apartment building, the street glistening under street lamps. Thank you, she said, unsure why. For what? For tonight. For reminding me the world isn't just numbers. He smiled faintly. And thank you for proving I'm not insane. She laughed softly, shaking her head. Good night, Mark. Good night, Anna. She climbed the steps to her apartment, her heart louder than her footsteps. For the first time in years, the silence of her home felt different, not empty, but waiting. That night, Anna dreamed. She stood in a gallery, walls lined with paintings. Each canvas held her image, not as she saw herself, but as someone else did. Strong, fragile, beautiful, broken. 100 versions of her, each more unfamiliar than the last. At the far end of the gallery, one painting hung half-finished, the brushstrokes trembling, incomplete. When she reached for it, she woke, breathless, her hands damp with sweat. On her nightstand lay a single page she didn't remember bringing home. The sketch of her face from Mark's notebook. How had it gotten there?